Hi, everyone. Dr. Steve Rasner here, and thank you for dropping by the Lionhearted Dental podcast. This week, I want to talk about what I think is the most unspoken part about long-term success in dentistry, whether you're the owner or an associate. And that is motivation, motivating your team. I mean, really motivating your team. And the art of delegation so you don't have to drive yourself crazy. That's what we're going to talk about. Before I do, I want to thank all of you for, you guys are funny. There's a scene in The Godfather where Michael Corleone says, every time I thought I was going to get out, they dragged me back in. So I'm very influenced, whether I should be or not, by the number of colleagues that download these podcasts. And honestly, over the years, it's been pretty consistent with a slow, steady rise. But once in a while, it takes a bump. It goes down. And I talked to myself and said, you know what? They're not listening. They don't care. What are you doing, Steve? Just give it up. And then I get a surprise, and that happened last month. I thought, you know what, maybe I've just lost it. Look, it's hard to do these each week without a guest, and quite honestly, I don't care enough to go get a guest, meaning it isn't my whole life. I do so many things, and having a podcast with various guests on each week isn't my thing. So, as I've said too many times, it's me and you. At the end of a week, I'm the elder statesman, clinician with 100 years experience, it feels like at times. And I'm trying to help you out. That's what this is. And it's pretty much worked. Lately, I've gotten just abundant emails from many of you with all kinds of things. And you guys went crazy in the last month with downloading me, so thanks. And you're making me feel wanted. So here I am again. So let's talk about it, man. I don't know what you want to talk about, but we're not going to talk about how to get great contacts today on Class 2 composites. Probably going to skip my gold foil lecture or achieving CO equals CR. Not today. We're going to talk about the stuff that I think will keep you going the strongest, the longest. And as I always have the goal for you, to maximize your potential. So let's talk about motivation. You could be sitting there right now saying, why? Why do I have to motivate? I should hire the right people and that should be enough. And that's just not how it works. Here's how it works. You, Doc, have the most to gain and the most to lose if you're not successful. So if you implement, for example, so many cornerstones that I've shared with you, getting paid up front, the art of a comprehensive exam, screening patients so you don't waste your time, getting case acceptance, all these things, which will absolutely propel you to a different level. You're never, ever going to achieve in private practice a fee for service and all the things that I think you would benefit from by doing things the way you're doing them. By considering a patient's insurance as part of what your treatment plan's going to be. Of not understanding the value and the benefit of indirect restorative dentistry, meaning using a lab or a machine in your office to mill over hours and hours of doing direct class to large composite dentistry. So if you do implement these things, you are going to feel the rewards. There's just no doubt. There's been too many people, too many doctors in my life that attest to the success of using these. And let's say you went up $1 million, I mean $1 million, by listening to some of these principles over the next 2 years, 3 years, either. You're not going to split that profitability with your team, nor should you. It's not the way you have the most to gain. And I'm not saying you're not going to bonus them and do some things, a lot of cool things I've done over my career. I'm sure you will, more so than when you're struggling. And if you don't do anything, if you, God forbid, fail, your team's not going to bail you out to get you out of the crises. So in reality, if you look in the mirror, the reason you have to be the lead motivator is because you have the most to gain or lose. And it's a beautiful price, because the price for motivating, the outcome, the reward, I should say, the reward for motivating is delegation. And delegation is everything. It's everything to make your life as good as it possibly can be in dentistry. And to be quite honest with you, if I was an associate, I'd follow these same principles. Because you, doctor, the associate, when you walk into the office that you work for, you have a circle of staff that know who you are and are responsible that day for your productivity, whether it's the people that schedule you. Think about it. Whether it's the people that schedule you, collect the fees for the work you're doing, the dental assistant, the sterilization assistants, the hygiene staff that you interrelate with, everybody. So listen, did you ever hear the analogy that a quarterback, or the stories, that a quarterback for professional football teams often reward and motivate their offensive line? Those of you that aren't into football, the offensive line is the 5 guys in front of the quarterback that protect his butt, that block for him so the 6'8" defenders can't squash him. So when you have a nice, good offensive line or an improving offensive line, it's very common for these guys to appreciate and be aware that they are improving and he's getting sacked less. So it's not an unusual concept. So let's talk about, for a minute, let me talk to you for a second about delegation. And I'm going to go back to tell you more about how you can motivate your team. And it's easy. And it's not expensive. You see, when you delegate, it takes all the pressure off you to remember all the things that are required to run a very successful practice. So some of the things, when I talk about delegation, might seem trivial to you, but to me, they're part of a smooth flowing day for me from Monday through Thursdays. I'll give you some examples of what I call delegating. A morning meeting, a productive morning meeting. You know, I've had podcasts strictly on the morning meeting and what should be accomplished. But think about this. One of the many factors that I look at that's important in a morning meeting will be, will this day, as it's presently structured, actually work? Are the patients given the proper time? Are you going to run late? To me, as a dentist of 42 years, one of the more demoralizing parts of a bad day for me is when I run late and I have the pressure on me. I mean, it kills me. It does. It kills me on the patient that's in my chair. It kills me on me walking into the next room 35, 40 minutes late on the patient that's my next patient. There's nothing that I can imagine that's worse than that. And 100% of the time, it is preventable by looking at the schedule and giving yourself enough time, quite honestly, more time. Because I've gone on record many, many times with you that one of the best things you could do for yourself starting Monday is add 30 minutes to most of your procedures. And you might say, well, I can't do that. That's going to kill my product. No, it's not. It's not going to kill your productivity. It's going to make you more productive. You know why? You're going to make less mistakes. Have any of my friends listening ever had a patient come back after you did a crown or a direct composite restoration and say you had a food trap? Well, guess what? Especially if it's a crown against another crown, you're doing it over, right? Or maybe you didn't have enough time to really, really assess the aesthetics of veneers on 8 and 9, and you inserted it. Maybe you're in a little bit of rush that day. Maybe you thought it was pretty good. It is so invaluable to give yourself more time as an immediate impact on not feeling the stress I'm alluding to. And I can tell you, in my history, it has always come down to somebody not looking at the schedule in the morning and picking up, can we really do this day? Because here's what happens. 6 weeks before your schedule on Monday, that day was probably almost empty. And as it builds towards Monday, people call, so you add in something. Maybe maybe somebody had a crown come out, and by the time you get there, it's human error. Nobody meant to give you a miserable day, but you have to check it. And that protocol is called, will this day work as scheduled? That's one of the things of a morning meeting. In addition to that, I can remember the days where part of my morning meetings were called collect those little balances. So when you take insurance, which I know most of you do, or many of you do, there's often a balance of $30 and $100, and maybe the treatment plan was $3,000. So in the scope of the original treatment plan, it doesn't sound that much. But the reality of it is when you add up those little balances, it becomes a severe negative impact on the doctor's income. It is. This is a real thing. The problem with the little balance is this. The only person that didn't get paid was the doctor. Everybody else got paid. So, the electric got paid, the blabs got paid. So our old protocol would be before that day arrived, the insurance department would have to verify whoever was in on that day. So let's say it was Monday, this coming Monday. So last week, the week before, by Wednesday or Thursday, when they looked at Monday's schedule, the insurance department would have, this is back when I took insurance, would have to verify that that's a true balance. Because the first thing that happens when you tell a patient, by the way, there was an old balance of $59 that you incurred in the last 4 months, and the patient's never going to say to you, oh, that's great. Is that all I owe? Can I give you a little bit more? They're always going to say, well, my insurance covers that, right? And you have to have somebody that has investigated it and backed it up. So things like that. Weak patients who might need a same-day confirmation, meaning that patients that have a history of breaking on you. Lab cases. The rule for lab cases was never that day, because it doesn't do you any good if you find out on Monday that a lab case due at 1 o'clock isn't there. So the labs have to be in. So that's what I mean. And I got to be honest with you. In my history, that 15 minutes was the starting point for a great or a bad day. And sometimes that day that meeting can easily dissolve into a social session on what your colleagues did, meaning your staff, over the weekend. Oh, your hair looks so great. What'd you do to it? I mean, I literally have heard these things before. So when I say delegation, my staff and your staff only know what's important to you if you constantly remind them. And I promise you that if you have a meeting next week on the importance of the morning meeting, which has other facets to it, by the way. What new patients are coming in? What patients are coming in for recall that day that had substantial work done in the last 12 months? So how they feeling about it? How they doing with that work? This is all part of a top shelf operation. So morning meeting is an example of it. Other stuff. A couple of weeks ago in my office today, present day situation, I had somebody turn over a room and the next patient was about to be seated and the floor was despicable. I mean, I was so furious because I have so over and over. And first of all, I'm overstaffed. And I've actually gone on record as saying, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'd rather be a little over. I don't think staff is ever the reason that you're going to go broke. And I think the opposite side of that fence of being understaffed, phones ringing, patients running, waiting in a reception room because a room's not ready, never adds up to being worth it. So yes, I'm actually overstaffed for most of my career. And I, for that price, and they know it. And part of motivating, I just said it, is letting your staff know what's important for you. And I will tell you, I will not hesitate. If I have a day where the schedule, I think, lends itself to the staff really getting caught up on things. And sometimes it's not that kind of a day. Sometimes my office has 3 hygienists on one given day, an associate besides me. That's 5 rooms out of the 7 in operation. And that's a hard day. That doesn't happen every day. But there's other days, for whatever reasons, it's just me, Wednesdays, and 2 hygienists. That's one way to motivate staff, by the way. I'm very sensitive to docking somebody's hours, meaning, hey, I don't really need you on Wednesday. It's a late schedule. I don't do that. But in return for that, I want what I want. And one of the things I want is a patient to walk into a room that is pristine. That is a hard thing to do. By the way, that's another protocol. When you hear me say protocols, if you've never tuned into me before, I wrote a book. It's one of my first books called The Protocol Book, What to Do When. And what happened is I tracked for 2 years, everything that happened that I didn't like and how I did want it to run and would write it out. So that's very hard to do. So maybe during that time, I don't remember, I'd walked into an operatory once and didn't like the way it looked. So that became the step back and look protocol when turning a room. And it's very easy once it becomes a habit. And my staff, quite frankly, let me down a couple weeks ago because it was a day that they had plenty of time. They sat a patient in a room. The patient didn't say anything. Maybe the patient didn't even see it. I don't know. I saw it. There was little bits of this or that. It wasn't blood or anything like that, but it didn't belong on the floor. And yes, it was easy to miss. So I have part of my clinical team inspect. Are you kidding me? You think that's asking a lot? What do you think they do in the hospitals? So I was not happy. And I called them out right in the middle of my day. I called them into my lab. I said, look, I don't yell and scream. I talk just like I'm talking right now. You can never yell and scream at people. It's ridiculous. I said, listen, look around. This is a true story. There's 5 of you here. You know that I don't need all 5 of you today. You know that. Why do you think I allow it? I don't dock it. Because I know it hurts you. I would remember next week or the week after if I asked one of you to leave early. And in return for that, I don't want to be a babysitter. You just sat a patient in a room that offends me. And it should offend you. You shouldn't need me to tell you that. It is sloppy and a lack of attention to detail. Now listen, guys, I don't know what you're thinking right this minute. I am trying to impart to you the value of delegating things and having people follow them, which they really do 90 whatever percent of the time. And honestly, that doesn't happen very often at all. But that's what I mean by once I ask somebody for something, I don't want to have to ask for it again. If I've taken the time to tell you what's important to me, and that's what I mean by delegation. And people aren't going to worry about or work hard for you to follow out your protocols, what you think is important, if they're not motivated and happy in the workplace, which I haven't gotten to yet. Other things like a prepared operatory. A prepared operatory is another delegation that I expect. So when I walk into a room, if it's a root canal, I want the patient to already have on them the lead apron. I've never had anybody say, could you get this off me? It's too heavy. I want the tooth and I know this sounds crazy to you, maybe. I want the x-ray up big, that I just look to my left, that I'm doing the root canal on, or an implant or an extraction. And I got to be honest, in my career, sometimes I walk in and you know what's up on the x-ray? The last patient's x-rays. The last patient that was in the room. I don't think that's an efficient office. Delegation, things like, okay, here's another big one. Do you ever get work through a day and find out at the end of the day it was really putrid production? That's because no thought went into it. I can't have that. You can't have that. So that's a different department than what I'm talking about with your clinical team, right? Let me finish the other thought in the clinical thing. So when I walk in a room and I pick up the drill, I don't want it to be the one out of the 16 drills I have that the turbine is frozen or I can't get a burr out as soon as I put a burr in because we knew about it 2 weeks ago and it was supposed to go out and get repaired. Can you feel me? You understand these little things that I don't want to deal with, and I really don't deal with most of the time. And, you know, as I said earlier in this podcast, of course, there never should be an episode ever in your office or mine where a patient comes in and the lab's not checked in, or you think it's coming at 10 o'clock with UPS. That is a no-no. That is a lack of protocols. That is a lack of delegation operating in your office is what it is. It's true. Somebody doesn't know that that's how important that is and how debilitating that is to the patient-doctor relationship. So our protocol is there's somebody in charge of looking at the schedule 1 week in advance at lab cases and are they back? And I see it, by the way, the opposite side of this coin that I'm discussing. You know, I'm giving you examples of it not happening very well. The opposite side, honestly, is it's like a symphony. I see Janae in my office on the phone with a lab asking, is this lab coming back on the 17th? The patient's in on the 19th. I see Michelle and others brainstorming to make sure that the next day's schedule is productive and that it will work. So these examples I just gave you of it not working, honestly, in my arena of practice are rare, but I know they happen to me even, so I'm sure they happen to some of you. And I'm just trying to give you the why this is so important. Or one more I'll give you before I tell you, well, then what are the best ways to motivate the team? And the other one is there's a department in my office for being aware of patients that fell out of treatment. Now that is extremely rare in my office because of one reason. Can you tell me what that is? Well, what do I talk about all the time? One of the cornerstones of completing treatment is you getting paid up front. When you get paid up front, almost never does somebody fall out of treatment. But it's not 100%. I said almost never. And it happens. It really does. And you're always the bad guy when it happens, because a patient, once in a blue moon, a patient will be honest about it and say they got sidetracked and they were very comfortable with the temporaries or the provisionals or whatever you made. But usually they'll say, I tried to reschedule, I got put on hold. All these things I got put on hold. That's a delegation thing in my office. Somebody knows that I don't want people put on hold for more than a few seconds. I'd rather you get the information and call them back. I could talk about any element of your practice and tell you how I've combated it by my team knowing what's important to me. It's true. So there's somebody in charge of looking over the last 3 months of accepted treatment plans and reporting to me in a written report where we are in treatment with that patient. And I go tell you that it's not unheard of that somebody's out there lost in space. And I'm sure it happens to you as well. So all these things, from turning the room over, having a prepared operatory so I can sit down and not have to say, can somebody else get me the other doctor's stool in room 1 because this is the one that won't go up and down. Follow-ups. Oh my goodness. Every single day somebody is in charge of reviewing with me who gets a follow-up call the next day. And I'll be quite honest with you, early in my career, it was me that did a lot of the follow-ups. My team is wickedly good, and it's a beautiful thing to teach them how to do things so you don't have to do them all. You hearing me? That's where delegation comes from. I ran a little late on this subject. I didn't expect to go this long, but I'm going to quickly review what I think are the most important things that motivate a team. And look, I could give you an hour of stuff I've done, from weekly back massages, not all of them. I had a masseuse come in on Wednesdays. I'm only giving you the point that I've done I had a cook in my office that we hired from a restaurant that prepared lunch every day for 6 months. It's true. I did that. You know what I found out? No matter what it is you do like that, after a while, it becomes taken for granted. It absolutely does. I actually feel that way, by the way, by connecting your increase in productivity or your increase in revenues to distributing that increase to the team. I find it way more effective not to do that, because that also, team, don't hate me for it, because it never works long term. If it did, everybody would do it. I'm not telling your doctor not to reward you. It's an absolutely wonderful thing with money. But you shouldn't tie it. See, you should have a team that wants every day and every week for it to be a great week, a great day, because inherently they're part of that and that makes them happy. That is what you're going for. Not, if I work my butt off for the next 2 months, I'll get an extra 1,000 or 500. That fails every time. So, what works? Do the unexpected. So let me tell you something I did yesterday. It's true. And I didn't even know I was going to cover this subject today. One of my staff members, front desk person, called off because her beloved doggy, boxer, in one of those fancy boxers, was bleeding all over her house the night before, and it needed an emergency surgery. And it was $7,000. And I heard all this because the staff was telling me. And she used to bring that dog into the office, by the way, once every 2 to 3 weeks. I loved it. She kept it behind her front desk. It's one of these dogs you look at and it's cute. Anyway, I offered her significant money because I didn't know her situation. True story, I did. I mean, not $500, more, way more. And she turned it down. She says, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, it's not always that, but it was an opportunity. Well, first of all, I cared, and I didn't want her to have to put the dog down. And I thought if I could help, it would help the situation. As it turned out, the dog had surgery, and she didn't need my help, but she knows I offered. And that goes to the money thing. When you recognize one of your staff members with an unexpected financial reward, be it an extra day vacation or the money that they make in one day. Hey, look, you can't give we're dentists, we're not Bill Gates. I mean, but I'm not talking about handing somebody $20 either. I'm talking about a significant in their paycheck, on the top of their paycheck, a separate check that they didn't expect. And I'm 100% sure of this because I've done the research on it. It is more rewarding than expected bonuses based on productivity increases or revenue increases over a given period of time. And by the way, Dr. Rasner at AOL.com, Dr. Rasner. And I'll elaborate with you privately on how to do these things. But other stuff that you can do. I mean, I've sent staff members, I've got them tickets, and when I get them tickets, it's always first class. First 5 rows if it's a concert. First 5 rows if it's a sporting thing. In addition to the financial aspects, being flexible. I wish it was different, guys. I wish the staff wanted to work as much as you and I do, but they love days off. And when you don't fight them on the days off and you're flexible, so here's how it works in my office for days off or a vacation. This is a delegation thing, by the way. The staff can always take off when they need to, as long as their first step is to make sure that they have coverage. So I have 5 hygienists. You might have 1, so it's a difficult road for you. So somebody's going to be off, they'll first go to the other operators and see if they can cover for them. And it's the same with the front desk. It's the same back in the clinic. And I get it. If you have 3 or 4 people, it's much more daunting for you. But I think you get the idea and the principle. But being flexible when they need time off or a vacation. Change of hours, being flexible with that. I had a staff member that liked to coach soccer from February to March. Not February to March, February to May. That meant she left my office at 2 o'clock. So I had 2 jobs to do. One, to cover for her, which I can do because I'm slightly overstaffed. And B, convince the other staff members why it was okay for those 3 months or 4 months that she could get out early. That I would do the same for them. And that we are a team and you shouldn't look negatively at it. Now, that all goes back to hiring correctly as well. Noticing and appreciating. I know it sounds fluffy BS, but it is true. It just doesn't cost anything. And it's really priceless to take moments each week, if they're there, don't make them up, to commend one of your staff members for a job they were doing, whatever that was. And it's as simple as, you know what? I don't know if you noticed that I noticed, but I saw what you were doing with Mrs. Smith and whatever, and I loved it. I'm very appreciative. And I want you to know that I won't forget it. And maybe in a few paychecks from now, I will prove that I won't forget it. I don't tell them that last part. Anyway, guys, look, today I wanted to talk about motivation and delegation because we don't talk about it very much, but it's the key to long-term success. The key is motivating a team that you can delegate to and trust them. That's the magic. Have a great week. Keep writing to me. I appreciate it. See you next week on the Lionhearted.